Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Lovely to have you here. So today's going to be a bit different. I wanted to do something really comforting and nostalgic and crafty based on one of my favourite children's books. I've been working hard at my new job and just needed to do something a little bit arty to help me unwind a bit. So Judith Kerr is one of my favourite authors and illustrators. She was an amazing woman. She famously wrote the Out of Hitler Time books, which is one of my favourite series, especially the first one. But she's most famous for her picture books such as Mog and The Tiger Who Came to Tea, which is a real British classic when it comes to children's books. And when I was little, I always wanted this tin of tiger food that Sophie buys at the end of the book, and I was never able to find one, however much I looked in supermarkets. I don't know why I wanted one exactly. I think it was more out of that sense that I was still very much, and I still do now, believing that fiction and reality very much intersect and overlap. But anyway, I thought that this video could be more like a podcast that you put on in the background. I don't know about you, but I really love videos like this where you're watching something being made or someone working on something, and I thought this could be more of an unfiltered, cosy little chat while I make something. So you can see here I've got my audiobook on. I love audiobooks. There's a little video that I'll put that you can watch about that. I was listening to Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which I love. I want to talk about that at some point later. One of my favourite books I've read so far this year. But as you can see there, I got one of these big coffee canisters from work, and I thought that would be the perfect thing to use to recreate my own tiger food tin. And it's actually made out of cardboard. So initially I thought about painting directly onto it, but I had loads of coloured card left over from when I did my zine making workshop. There's also a video about that. I'll link that as well. And why not just paint it flat and then wrap it around? I mean, that would be much easier. And then it meant that if I made mistakes, I didn't have to worry about it. So what I'm doing here is I'm mixing some acrylic paint and I'm just making a basic tiger outline. This was really one of those instances where I just had to trust the process because for a long time it doesn't really look like much. But if there's anything I learned from watching episodes of Art Attack on CITV way back when, is that the moment you add black and black lines, a piece all comes together. So trust me with this. But the interesting thing is, the reference picture I'm using from the picture book, the drawing of the tiger is actually very simplistic and not very detailed, probably because it's quite small scale. But also one of the brilliant things about Judith Kerr's work is that it looks deceptively simple, but they're actually really detailed and really beautiful pieces. And Judith Kerr kind of revolutionised the picture book a bit. She says in this interview she did that when her children were learning to read, a lot of the books were really boring and the pictures literally depicted exactly what the words said. So it might say, Jane is brushing her hair, and it would have a picture of Jane brushing her hair. Whereas in order to encourage and interest the children, she added in little humorous details and expressive things that only made sense fully once you had managed to read the words, but that was still exciting and enriching if the child was struggling a bit. And I just loved that. And she also took into account the fact that parents would have to read these books over and over again, and therefore made them funny and interesting. I then decided to add a bit of finer detail using acrylic Posca pens. If you haven't yet discovered Posca pens, they may just change your life. They are my favourite tool to use. So I added these once it was dry, and I could then put in some of this black detail. I actually didn't add much detail in acrylic because when you look at the tiger, it's pretty block coloured. There are little highlights of yellow here and there, but I was trying to make it really stand out on the blue background, and orange and blue, if you know anything about colour theory, really pop together and really look really good. And also, if you pay attention to packaging, especially nowadays, a lot of it has got a lot more simplistic when it comes to colours, whether that's due to printing costs or trends. So essentially, this is a very roundabout way of me justifying that I just wanted to use a limited colour palette. But I think it works quite well. And I also used one of my favourite pens, which is a uni ball pen. I do wish they were refillable because they're just my favourite and I get through so many of them. Greta Thunberg would not be impressed with me. That is one of my guilty pleasures, are these pens. But I love that they allow you to get really fine detail in there. And I just really enjoyed making this. It was really fun, and I think I captured the tiger's sort of cheerful but slightly mischievous expression quite well. I wanted the tin to feel like a real product, and so one of the things I did is I went through the entire book and I found every single thing that the tiger consumes when he visits Sophie's house, and I wrote it down as ingredients which I then decided to stick on the back of the tin just to add that little extra something. I also made a best before date and a little barcode which I striped black and orange like a tiger. I know, genius. But that's just something that just made me happy to have that little extra detail on it, even if you never see it. The next thing I did was write out the tiger food lettering, and I went to one of my favourite websites that I've been using for years, which is DeFont, which is a really great database of lots of different typography styles, and I love to use it for reference when I'm drawing things or creating little posters. So I measured this all out to make sure it all looked uniform and the same, and then I went in and filled each letter in with a black Posca pen. I've actually had this video idea in my head for a really long time, and initially I wanted to make a whole video about why I think people should read children's books, because it's something I'm actually really passionate about. So I have just read a brilliant essay that you can actually buy as a little book, and it's called Why You Should Read Children's Books Even Though You Are So Old and Wise, and it's by Catherine Rundell, published by Bloomsbury. Catherine Rundell is a really popular children's writer. She was preaching to the converted because I basically agreed with everything she was saying. But one of the points that really stuck with me is this idea that reading has to be this competitive uphill struggle. And that's something I have always disagreed with. Luckily, my mum brought me up going to libraries and saying I could read whatever I wanted to. So I'm really lucky in that respect. And she was a primary school teacher as well, so she always encouraged me to just read whatever I wanted, really. But I know there are a lot of people who think about reading the same way that I think about exercise, which is about gradually pushing yourself harder and harder and harder and challenging yourself. And in her book, Catherine Rundell said, so you start with your children's books, you then move on to the next level, you'll have your young adult books, and then adult books. And she said by the time you're on your deathbed, you'd then be reading really depressing, incredibly hard books, and that's all you'd have to entertain yourself. And I think that's such a good point. Why is there this idea that reading has to be a linear thing and that you can only read some books when you're in that age? That baffles me completely. It's worth remembering that children's books are written by adults. When it comes to picture books especially, they are literally little pieces of art that are really affordable and that tell a story as well. I have a very good friend of mine who is an author and illustrator, double whammy, and looking at their work, it's just mind-blowing how much time and talent and knowledge and craft goes into the pictures. So I just hate it when people write these books off, because there is such a craft and an art and a hidden depth to children's books if you only take a bit of time to actually read them and enjoy them. I'm not by any means saying that you should only read children's books or that you have to read them all the time, but never feel embarrassed to read a children's book, because they can be really comforting, they can be nostalgic, they can be funny, they can be full of magic. and I really enjoy reading them from time to time. So what I'm doing here is I've just covered the paper with sticky back plastic. It was a two-woman job I should say, and it was a bit of a challenge, but it means that the tin will last a lot longer. And I then used double-sided sticky tape, one of my favourites, to attach it onto the tin. So here is the finished piece. I'm really happy with it. I think it looks really sweet and lovely, and I can actually use it as well. It's a functional object, which is one of my favourite things to make. You can see all the ingredients on the back there. I'm going to put my Posca pens in there because I'm getting to the point where I have too many to fit in one little jug, which is where I was keeping them before. But this has loads of space in it, which could be dangerous because it means I will probably buy quite a lot more pens. But I really like that I can put it in something that I've decorated with the pens themselves. That's quite satisfying to me. Also, this would have just gone in the bin, but I think it looks exactly like the one in the book, but with my own little twist on it. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day, and remember to read some children's books. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.